Hi everyone, if you've watched my introductory video about this series, you will know that I will discuss each of the 5 subsections of the TRKI Russian language exam at C1 level. In this video, I'm going to talk about probably one of the scariest sections, which is the speaking test, and it's also going to be the longest video of all. With the speaking exam, there are a variety of tasks, and especially the first few tasks that I'm going to talk about, I have not encountered before in other language exams, and they can certainly seem a bit weird. But once you know what you need to do, they are not that scary at all. And actually, there's quite a lot you can do to prepare for them. So let's get into these tasks now. In the first part of the test, you are going to be asked to imagine that you are in a scenario with 2 friends. And the examiner will play the role of the 2 friends, and you are required to respond to them. And the scenario is usually that you've visited a certain place or gone to a shop or something like that. And the 2 friends will express their opinion about your experience, and you need to agree with your friends. The way to approach this is to be aware that you need to give your answer in 2 parts. So in the first part, you need to express your agreement explicitly. So you need to say something like, "Я согласен", "Да, верно". And you cannot repeat the way you agree. So because in the first part, there are 4 prompts. So you need to give 4 answers, and the way you agree in those 4 answers cannot be the same. And also you cannot repeat a phrase that has been used by an examiner. So to be on the safe side, you might want to remember 6 ways of agreeing with someone. And then in the second part of your reply, you need to basically repeat the substance of what your friends have said, but not use the same words. So for example, if your friend is saying, the food in this restaurant is great, it's very tasty, then you need to say in a different way. So you can say, oh, they should give them a Michelin star. What I found in the course of preparing for this part of the exam is that basically you can compile a mini phrasebook to use, because the scenario is always going to be about a kind of customer experience. So there aren't that many different things that people can say about it. The restaurant is crowded or spacious, the food is good or bad. I just identified about 10 things that someone might say after going to a restaurant or a wedding or going on a trip. And then I thought of basically 3 ways that you can express that. So obviously it could be positive or negative, but it's good to come up with different ways before you go into the exam, so that it's almost automatic. And again, AI is your friend here, because you can just ask AI to give you 3 ways to say that something is delicious, and try to memorize them before you go into the exam. In the second part of the exam, you're also given 4 prompts, and you need to give 4 replies. And in this scenario, you're also talking to a friend, but this time you need to disagree with the friend. And it's usually a friend who has made a decision that he or she regrets, and you need to persuade them that it's not so bad. So similar to the first part, your answer should come in 2 parts. So the first part is a phrase of disagreement. And again, you cannot use the same phrase, repeat the same phrase in your 4 answers. So you need to just memorize some phrases like "Ты не прав", "Это не так", And then in the second part, you need to justify your disagreement. So it's some way of saying, the friend is wrong or it's not so bad. So it could be like, if in the scenario the friend is worried about going on a trip and they'll be bored, then you say, oh no, there's lots to do in this country. Unfortunately, there isn't as much you can prepare for as in the first task, because it's harder to predict what will come up. But the key thing to remember, as for the first task as well, is that you don't need to say anything fancy. So don't think that because it's a C1 exam, you need to come up with very fancy ways of saying things. It's actually perfectly acceptable, even in the first task, to say, да, мне тоже очень понравилось, which is something that you could say at an A1, A2 level, but it's perfectly valid for this part of the exam. So don't feel that you need to come up with something very difficult. The key is to respond quickly. In the third part of the test, you need to read out 4 sentences with the right tone of voice. And again, I found this really weird when I first read about it, but it really is as simple as it sounds. But basically, you're being judged on whether you can convey emotions with the tone of voice. So it could be doubt or delight or surprise, disappointment, indignation, and so on. The 2 tips I will give is the first, you can treat this as a very hammy acting exercise. So make sure that you are really emphasizing the emotion that you're meant to express. And then secondly, when the examiner is reading out the instructions, go through the sentences very quickly and then identify any words where the stress might trip you up, because you don't want to mispronounce words and get the stress wrong. So if you just have a quick look and then mark with your pen any words with a kind of tricky stress, to make sure that you can read the sentence smoothly in one go. So in the 4th section of the test, you need to give a short presentation about a moral issue. You'll be given some time to prepare your presentation, and you also need to watch a short video that is related to the topic. Go into the exam with a structure in mind. And this is the structure that I used. I began with saying that, the moral topic is this, and kind of set up a contrast. So on the one hand, this is important. On the other hand, that is also important, and there's conflict between the two. And then you need to present your opinions. So basically which side you're on, or you can kind of say, both are important and you need to find a balance between them. And then very importantly, you need to make the link to the video, and resist the temptation to describe the whole video. You just need to make the link. Then after you've done that, you can go to the conclusion and basically just restate your position on the issue. In terms of vocabulary, because you already know that this part of the exam is always about moral and ethical issues, it's important to have a few words in your back pocket that can be used in most scenarios. So words like sprawiedliwa, moralnie, принципы, оправдано, things like that. So you're not lost for words during the presentation. Now, in the 5th part of the exam, you are again placed in a scenario. In this case, it's a business scenario. Usually, you are a director of a certain company, and something bad has happened, and you need to talk to an employee to solve the problem. And you will also be given time to prepare, so about 5 minutes, and you also need to read a short letter of complaint that will be given to you as the context of the conversation. In this part of the exam, you are judged on your ability to speak formally in a business setting, and that might be worrying for some people because as someone learning a foreign language, that's probably not an experience that you can gain just from speaking with friends. But fortunately, there is actually quite a lot that you can prepare for in this part. So first of all, you get points for just opening and closing the conversation correctly. So as simply as saying "Здравствуйте" in the beginning and at the end, "Всего доброго." And then about when you are describing the problem, you can just basically read out the sentences in the letter that you get presented with, and then just sort of ask an open question, ask the examiner, why do you think this problem happens? And then the examiner will do some speaking, and there is some time for you to think as well. And because you are speaking in a formal situation, remember to use "v" all the time. And there are some helpful stop phrases that are usually used in a business scenario. So for example, you can say "Мне сообщили что," and then you can describe the problem. Before you end the conversation, you need to propose a solution. The solutions can be prepared beforehand because there are not that many different solutions. So it could be that the employee needs to apologize to the client, or a compensation needs to be made. Use your imagination about the possible solutions you could come up with, and then just find how you say those things in Russian and come to the exam with that. Now we've come to the final part of the speaking test. In the final part, you will take part in a free-flowing discussion with the examiner about a certain topic. There is no preparation time, and the conversation will last for about 10 to 15 minutes. And in the exam that I took, which is administered by St. Petersburg University, I could choose the topic that I wanted to discuss out of education, technology, economic, social problems, the environment, that kind of thing. So do check whether the test that you are taking allows you to do that, to basically designate the kind of topic that you are interested in. Because if you do, then the obvious thing to do is to find out for yourself what you're most comfortable talking about, brushing up on your vocabulary in that topic before the exam. It might seem a bit scary that you don't get any preparation time. But if you look at the official description of the exam, where you can see the marking scheme, you actually find that rather than one big conversation, there are 11 things that the examiners are looking for. So I'm going to read them out because I think it's helpful to know. So they are presentation of the topic, saying which side of the debate you are on, expressing agreement or disagreement, presenting a possible solution, justifying your rejection of your interlocutor's point of view, insisting on your own position, describing a concrete situation, expressing comparison, recommendation, defining a concept, and drawing a conclusion. So why do I read out all of these things in such detail? It's basically, you need to be aware that the examiner will be actively looking for these things and will say things as prompts for you to respond to, so you can show that you can do these things. So one thing to be aware of is you don't approach it as a normal debate. So you might find that actually it's a bit less stressful than it is to kind of need to defend your position in a language that obviously you are much weaker than compared to your examiner. So rather than thinking of this as a debate, just think of it as a series of questions you need to answer, and you let the examiner do the job of asking you those questions. And in addition, keep in mind that you will be judged on your ability to disagree. So when the examiner says that their position is XYZ, you need to take the opposite position, so that you show that you can disagree and have a debate. But luckily, the examiner will ask you first to choose a side. They will describe two possible positions to take in the debate and then ask you which side you agree with. So you have a chance first to choose your side, and then the examiner will choose the opposite position. And just make sure that you stick to that position throughout, and don't switch sides to agree with your examiner. And then secondly, because it's a kind of series of questions, you might find that the flow of the conversation is a bit weird. So suddenly the examiner might ask you, what would you recommend a friend to do if they find themselves in situation X? Although it will be related to the topic that you're discussing, it might not be the most natural progression of the conversation. Don't overthink this. Just answer the question that you are asked, because it's going to be related to one of the points that I read out just now. And we've come to the end of the speaking test. Not everyone will find the same bits challenging, but certainly speaking is probably one of the bits that are most difficult to practice on your own. So hopefully this has been helpful in giving you some ammunition for the exam. But still, I think it's very helpful if you can to practice with a teacher or someone you know who speaks Russian, just so that you can get a feel of giving the presentation or doing the business dialogue. And that's it. If you have any specific questions, please let me know in the comments, and I will try to answer them as best I can. Thanks for watching.